how about this? Let's make it literal for YouTube. Don't paint any pictures that in any way question Dr. Fauci or the World Health Organization, and I'll put them up and split the money with you. You are absolutely a party to the production, distribution, development, and sale of that product. YouTube does several things. They routinely publish updated guidelines. This is not a good faith removal. If YouTube said in their rules, if we find your content to be objectionable under C2A, Section 230 C2A, we may remove it in a good faith effort.
Correct.
For these reasons. YouTube does not do this. YouTube makes political decisions over who is the most appropriate medical authority, for instance, which was a big deal during COVID. That is entirely editorial direction.
It's development.
It is completely development. So you have two factors here. The first, I believe creation is an argument that should be argued, and I believe any reasonable person would have to agree.
The law must obvious.
Creation's obvious. YouTube says, we're going to sell ads on content you make, and we're going to split the money, and we will determine if it's good enough to make the money if people see it or not.
Yeah, that's development.
Is absolutely, no, that's creation. That's creation. This is YouTube.
It's kind of both.
It is both, but this is for the creation argument. Think of it this way. I say to
well, creation would be the part where they're paying to have the content effectively made. There's your creation aspect.
Right. And so
but to prioritize it, that's when it becomes a development issue.
So the development, I'm going to split this up into two arguments, but there's an obvious overlap. If I am to make content on YouTube and I just put it up and YouTube blindly just says it may or may not appear, we don't know, or it's reverse. I think algorithm's out the window. I think they can't do algorithmic distribution because that is a choice they make on who to show. But when you combine these things together, that YouTube tells you as a new user, we're going to split the revenue. Hey, make a video. We're going to sell ads on your video. We're going to put it on our platform, and we're going to choose when and how many people get to see it.
Yep.
That is a party to the creation of the content. Development is when they say, hey, if you make YouTube videos under these specific rules and regulations that are subject to change at any moment, we want you to make content fitting these guidelines. Then we're going to sell ads against it. Then we're going to promote it. We're going to make sure people see it, and we're going to split the money with you. You would be hard pressed to make the argument that if I said I have a gallery, I have a gallery space on the corner of 5th and Lexington or whatever. It's got big, beautiful glass windows. I can't be held responsible for what I put in those windows, and I'm going to tell someone I'm gonna bring customers in. I'm gonna sell your paintings. I'm gonna split the money with you if you paint pictures of Donald Trump looking bad. Or how about this? Let's make it literal for YouTube. Don't paint any pictures that in any way question Dr. Fauci or the World Health Organization, and I'll put them up and split the money with you. You are absolutely a party to the production, distribution, development, and sale of that product.
Right.
This is massive. This would mean the end of all algorithmic feeds, because an algorithmic feed is by which the platform has decided who will be visible and who will not, which is distribution by choice, and the moderation rules that even X has right now, that YouTube has. The big argument here is you could make a very simple rule that says Section 230 CA, we have the right in good faith to remove for these reasons and nothing else. The problem then is they'd have to remove massive amounts of content. YouTube doesn't want to be in the position where they're going to have 20 to 30% of the content produced falling under a nebulous definition of lewd and lascivious.
Right.
They want to tell you explicitly what they think is lewd and lascivious or objectionable. Objectionable to them is arbitrary. The World Health Organization is hereby the authority on all things medical, not the CDC, not your doctor, not WVU Medical Center.
Right.
We have editorially and arbitrarily chosen who we think that authority is. If you produce content that doesn't adhere to our developmental guidelines, we will remove it from our platform.
Right.
That is 100% development.
How much of that is influenced by what they hear from advertisers and what advertisers want to see?
That's the whole premise of my lawsuit. The fact is that they develop the information, they remove me, and they put my advertisers in place of me, because that's how you develop an idea, right? You get rid of the pieces you don't want, you keep the pieces you do want. The point is, where it failed is C1 was being used as blanket immunity to completely backdoor C2. There was no consideration. It just completely messed up. And see, it's changing. Here's why. This is the great part. So, of course, my briefs have been out there for years, right? And we had the right argument from day one. Of course, the trolls, say that I don't even know if I want to touch this, but Facebook lied about me flat out. They said I had pages dedicated to urination, which was an outright lie, right? The page's name was Take a Piss Funny. Well, Take a Piss is a UK,
like
to make fun of funny things, right? And I had actually accidentally transcribed it, but they're like, oh. And the judge is not supposed to consider facts of the plaintiff facts of the defendant at the time of dismissal. He put it right in the first paragraph, which of course disparaged me even more. This is the same guy who recused himself and has millions in tech stock. This is what I've been fighting, right? But here's the kicker. If C1 is simply applied correctly, C2 is going to be all your, and an easier way to understand development is any affirmative content decision. If they're doing it with their own intent, it goes to consideration in C2A and that goes to trial based on the merits. That's how this is supposed to work.
You're supposed to be able to argue whether or not they were in good faith.
Yeah, and the good faith was decided by a jury, not by them. So what you're saying about it being arbitrary, it is. There is no legal definition. What it's going to be is 12 people that decide, was that done in good faith? And arguably, I think they should have a fairly wide swath.
What I would need to know is, we probably should have had a lawyer with us. The question of, let's say, Hustler magazine, the publisher of that is going to be, the parent company or whatever.
Right.
However, do the courts, through legal precedent, consider individuals otherly involved in the creation of that magazine to be publishers? Mm-hmm. So let's do a different example. Let's say that there is a company that manufactures all of the graphics, designs, and stories for a magazine, and then uses a third-party printing company to print and then hand the physical copies out for distribution. Would that secondary company be considered a publisher as well? Not under any kind of newsroom definition of who the publisher is, but in terms of what it means to publish content.
Are they just a conduit? Are they acting as just a conduit, meaning they don't make any content consideration? If they have no content consideration
but they're
whatsoever,
making the magazine itself.
Like to create it?
So there's a company that creates a PDF.
Yeah.
And it's got pictures, photos. They compile it out with their journalists. They send that to a third-party printer who then physically makes the magazines and hands them off to trucks to be delivered. Are they also a publisher?
The point there would be based on the intent. It would come down to the merits of the case, whether or not if they knew what they were publishing. Like it.
Well, I guess
if you're knowingly distributing child pornography, you are actually liable automatically. Mm-hmm. Matter of fact, Section 502 of this same thing says that it's a crime to knowingly distribute content. And see, that right there has been what's changed. You heard about Anderson versus TikTok, right? That recent case. Did you hear about that?
I'm trying to find legal definition.
So under Anderson versus TikTok, the basic premise of the case is that
real quick.
Okay.
It gets crazier. According to Cornell, to publish means to make a publication, to give publicity to a work.
Yeah.
To make a work available to the public in physical or electronic form,
Yep.
to circulate or distribute a work to the general public. Mm-hmm. This would mean that your or a argument completely stands.
Yes.
We would not consider them to be the publisher of the content.
Because that's somebody else.
But they are a publisher.
Correct.
By giving it publicity and distributing the content.
You got it. It's all in the words. We're just asking them to apply the law correctly based on how it's actually written. It's not some dramatic, novel idea. Do what it says.
So what would be the fallout if this all you in your case?
Well, let me go back to the TikTok case, because this will show you some monster. Like, this is about to change dramatically. Like, dramatically. Now, I don't know if they have some other plan with AI coming after that, and they're just going to finally have to, capitulate to us. Mm-hmm. But Anderson versus TikTok, the basic premise of the case is that Anderson sued because somebody had died based on the blackout challenge. Remember that?
Yeah, I remember that.
Okay, so they sued, and they said, well, TikTok's argument was, we're not the publisher. Like, they brought a C1 defense. Mm-hmm. And they said, well, we're not suing you as the publisher or speaker. We're not trying to treat you as someone else, right? There's no real protection in that. That's just preventing you from being treated as another individual in its correct application. Right now, it protects all publishing, right? That's what's wrong.
Right.
So they argued a C1 defense, and the Third Circuit, right? Because remember we were talking about forum selection. Ninth Circuit's a whole different animal out there. But the Third Circuit decided to get it right. And they turned around and they said, wait a second. No, you knew that that was a harmful challenge and you still recommended it. You developed it. They found that they were not, it had nothing to do with being the publisher or a publisher.
Developer of it.
The content provider. You knew that this harms people and you still did it anyhow. And see, the sad part is, do you know that if this had been applied correctly, it would have worked against Backpage years ago. Backpage, they had to create two new
interesting.
law, FOSSA and SESTA,
That's right.
because it was never applied correctly. But the reality was,
Wait, FOSTA and SESTA was because of Backpage?
because of the failures of Section 230.
Interesting. I didn't realize
They had to
that-
create
that-
new
that
laws to protect
relationship.
children. And see, the reason that they exist is because if they had read it correctly, what would have happened is they would say, no, you didn't create the content that was trafficking, but you had an escort section. You made it easier for them to make money. You did all of these things to
and you took their
facilitate
money.
tracking.
Yeah.
That's development.
Yeah.
So I've got another angle, at least as it pertains to Wikipedia, I've often argued, that I think could be another vector for altering 230 precedent and social media that I do not believe has been even attempted to be adjudicated. Before you, I have the James O'Keefe Wikipedia page. Now let's with your knowledge of Section 230,
I've already looked into a Wikipedia argument, so I know exactly how this works.
So my argument is this article is from Wikipedia.
Yeah.
It's not from a third party.
Right.
It's not from, PP Poo Poo 420. Actual YouTube user who super chats, by the way. Good name. This is, by their own admission, Wikipedia says, from Wikipedia, the free encyclopedia. The byline on the article is, Wikipedia published this. Therefore, any misrepresentation, defamation, or otherwise is the responsibility of the publisher, Wikipedia, who has taken credit for the article.
Yes.
The argument I've heard is that, no, Wikipedia articles are aggregate. They're, you go to the view history, and you can see all of the different people who contributed to this. My proposal then was, and people actually did this. I said, okay, then we can make a website, a news website, where everyone gets to they get to offer up a single word.
Yep.
And the users can vote on that word. And then you can actually write an article that says Kamala Harris brutally kicked a dog and stomped it to death, and no one will be responsible. Why? An individual user wrote only the word the.
Right.
An individual user wrote only the word Kamala. You can't sue me. All I wrote was Kamala.
Someone
you
else
can't
just
sue me.
wrote
All I wrote
dog.
was dog.
Right.
Someone else put it there. And they say, what about the website that published it? Don't look at us. It's the users who wrote the words. That means there is no speaker of what was published.
Right.
An absurdity. Wikipedia does not show you in this each and every user who added words. So my argument was this.
At the end of the day, they aggregated. The fact is there is content development in there.
But take a look at this. Let's say that someone went to James O'Keefe's page and wrote, James Edward O'Keefe, born June 20th, 1984, is an American political activist who founded Project Veritas, a far-right activist group that uses deceptively edited videos and information gathering techniques to attack mainstream media organizations and progressive groups. Now, let's say somebody writes that, okay?
It's already defamatory.
It is defamatory, but
Deceptively.
there's arguments that deceptively is an opinion. What does that mean? And
Right.
And now hold
they're
on.
responsible for that opinion.
What if then someone goes in and adds to this paragraph after groups, comma, kicks dogs mercilessly?
Yeah. To death.
No. Hold on. That's a sentence fragment. I never defamed James O'Keefe.
Right.
If I go on X right now and wrote kicks dogs mercilessly, people go, what does that mean? If I go onto Wikipedia and say, I never wrote the first paragraph, I, as a user, just simply wrote the words kicks dogs mercilessly. What's the argument? No. That's absurd, right? A reasonable judge is going to say you knew what you were adding to that paragraph under James O'Keefe, as if to imply then anything written before is also your liability should you even add a period and click publish to alter the article, which would mean, and I believe that's reasonable, every single person on Wikipedia who has added to Wikipedia is legally liable for everything written before them that they confirmed. That is to say,
Oh, that's interesting.
if you go on Wikipedia and it says James O'Keefe is an activist, and then you write and a journalist, you wrote only and a journalist, but you are now responsible for what came before it because you clicked publish. Someone else then comes in and writes and a philanthropist. They are now responsible for everything that came before it. All that's happened is when they went to edit this, they were presented with a pre-written text, which when they hit submit, they confirmed was their writing, all of it.
Yep.
Every single person So I argue this. What we would need to see, of course, is lawsuits. Yeah. The first thing I'd say is I don't know the capability of the individuals who watch, but imagine under the development argument, we got 1,000 lawsuits in every different jurisdiction. And it would not be too expensive, but you'd have to be able to afford it, right? Yep. How would these come? Eventually, you're going to get into a court and they're going to be like, oh, absolutely. Providing editorial guidelines under your community guidelines of how to produce content is directing the creation of that content. That means you're in development of it.
Right.
You're selling ads against it, saying we will show it if you do these things. It's a gallery saying, I will put your paintings up if you give me good paintings and you don't do these things that make me angry or would piss people off. You are giving them developmental guidelines.
Yep.
Next, imagine if we go to view history and I take a look at this. Green Seabot moved one URL. I don't think there's an argument that they're responsible for any speech for moving a URL. They didn't add anything. But right here, football team executive, 506 characters, Objective 3000. We can preview exactly what Objective 3000 wrote, and let's see if they added anything that was defamatory. The owner of the team was, comma, but the person he went out with was actually an undercover reporter for O'Keefe Media, and then references. This individual, who wrote only 2-sentence fragments, should, in my opinion, be sued for the entirety of the article. So you have to file some kind of paperwork for the discovery of the individual, their username, their location, so that the lawsuit can be filed. Wikipedia would likely have to comply, just as YouTube does when these things happen. And then this individual will have to make the defense of, I didn't write that, which opens up a can of worms. What did you write, and why are you not responsible for everything else published in that article?
So I might differ on that opinion, right? Because if that individual had, that they sourced from, his information that made it to Wikipedia was aggregated by Wikipedia and then used for it. What he said he would be responsible for, but he could actually bring a 230C1 defense and say, I can't be treated as Wikipedia. I didn't do that. They used my words in a different context, maybe. There's actually a process.
He is a publisher of the content.
Of the original content. That's what he's responsible for, but not what Wikipedia used it for, right? There's something... And
I'm saying that... What I'm saying is two different things. The users are not protected under Section 230. If I go on X and say Libby kicked a dog, Libby can sue me.
Do you know how much hell I catch every time you say Libby kicked a dog?
Use that little clip, right?
I'm intentionally making up something false as a point that you could sue me for defamation where I have to actually imply it. These users have no protections. My argument is we should be suing Wikipedia users for the slightest alteration to add words under the argument I made that they are knowingly adding things to a greater context and they are speaking the entirety of the article. They have no Section 230 protections.
Well, that would
sue them for defamation.
That would be like how you're suing the Kamala Harris campaign for her defamatory speech on X, but you're not suing X for allowing the speech.
Right, because
to
X
remain.
wasn't the party. They can't be treated as Kamala Harris, right? Do you know there's a name? There's actually a name for this. Look up proof texting.
Proof texting.
Yeah. This whole process, there's an actual name for this thing. Mm-hmm. My attorney used it in one of our briefings, and I was like, what's that? And I looked it up, and I'm like, there it is. Mm-hmm. This is what they do.
The only thing I can find about proof texting is references to the Bible.
Yes. Read it.
The practice of using a Bible verse or passage out of context to support a theological belief or argument.
So it started with the Bible. This has been happening for a long time. It's taking something out of context to mean something else. It's what they do to Trump constantly. They like the Charlotte thing, right? Where the very fine people. They use a piece of it to use it out of context in order to use it in a different way that was never meant in the first place. And they did it with the Bible. And it's literally got a name. It's how they manipulate context. They do the same thing with press. A good lawyer, if they can't argue the merits, they can't argue the facts. They just slam. They used to say they slam their hands on the table just to confuse people. But they use precedent, these pieces of precedent, and that's what they did to me as well. They said that 230C1 protects traditional editorial function in quotes, right? Well, what they mean by that, out of the original Zoran case, right, Zoran versus American Online, the traditional publisher function was a platform, a distributor's function. The basic conduit of information. and they turn that into it was an active publication decision that it protects. And it's, again, using that context out of its original context in order to mean something totally different. And that's where it comes from, proof texting.
Interesting.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
I learned so much, and we were talking about like Wikipedia and why I even looked into Wikipedia. I became a subject matter expert on Section 230. Like I've invited, it was funny because when we started talking about this, you invited some of my opposition to come sit here. I would have loved that because I don't have a bar license. I don't need a bar license. I just need to be smart. I've got 6 years. I understand this thing. I can cite it verbatim, and my argument come out, and and he did the whole urination thing just to smear me. And meanwhile, I've offered to pay for him to debate me.
Really? And he still won't do it?
Oh no. He's the co-dean of a school, of a law school. He should be embarrassed because in reality, I would end his career. He would look like an idiot because I can smoke any lawyer on this. I became I guarantee you I'm the foremost expert in the nation. And I mean, I know that's a really bold statement, but I go up to lawyers and they say, oh, I know Section 230. I said, okay, why are there quotes on Good Samaritan? And they look at me funny, right?
Right.
Well, because of that subject matter expert issue, I became an expert in other cases. And this is where we started going after the censorship industrial complex.